What's good? Zimbabwe, muhle muri eZimbabwe, ndinomgamshira mchongwa chedu cheve chidiki, uhlelo The Connection, muyineni Michael Hove. Muri eZimbabwe, unfortunately, silusizi due to COVID-19, we're all working from home. What this means is this program that you're tuned into, Live Talk The Connection, brought to you by Studio 7, Voice of America, October 2020, is a pre-recorded program. Just the name muri eZimbabwe, nonetheless tripano sisonke like so lapha kuhlelo lwethu labasakhulayo. Tonight on The Connection, we continue the discussion on COVID-19. We speak to young doctors, young medical experts about the impact the global pandemic has had on Zimbabwean youth and the nation at large. But we're also going to be focusing on another big thing that's happening here in the United States of America. Next week, on Tuesday, the 3rd of November 2020, the United States of America is going to be having the presidential elections, whereby we're going to see folks, people like President Donald Trump and the former Vice President Joe Biden heading head to head. But our conversation is not all going to end there. We're also going to focus on something very big that happened over the weekend. Over the weekend, Zimbabwe lost another young gentleman, 35-year-old rapper Kelvin Mhlizio. Kelvin was well known across the whole globe, across the whole continent, for his music. He started music he has produced alongside the likes of Casper Nyovest, the likes of Shasha, who recently won a BET, along the likes of Gigi Lamaine and others. So we're going to be taking a moment to remember the life of Kelvin Mhlizio. But first up, coronavirus, COVID-19. According to Johns Hopkins University, over 43 million people have contracted COVID-19 worldwide. Approximately 1,160,000 people have died due to COVID-19. And some positivity, there are more people who are recovering from COVID-19 than those that are dying to date. Over 29,240,000 people have recovered from COVID-19. Now, according to the most recent tweet issued by the Ministry of Health, Zimbabwe currently has over 8,300 COVID cases. The death toll currently stands at 242, and approximately 7,800 people have recovered. So I repeat, in Zimbabwe, 8,300 COVID cases. The death toll currently sits at 242, and approximately 7,800 people have recovered from COVID-19 in Zimbabwe. Now, the latest information released by the Ministry of Health does not show the cumulative amount of tests conducted to date. However, it does show that 698 PCR tests were conducted yesterday alone. Of those 698, 27 cases tested positive, and to date, 7,798 people have recovered, and just yesterday alone, Muri Zimbabwe, 5 people died. The country currently has 264 active COVID-19 cases. Now, what does this all mean to Zimbabwe? What does this all mean to Zimbabwean youth? And how relevant is this information? We reach out to Dr. Arnold Teremuka, who is going to be breaking down what exactly all these COVID-19 cases mean, who's going to talk about behavior changes in Zimbabwe, and he's also going to be focusing on how COVID-19 has affected Zimbabwean youth. Let's head over to Dr. Teremuka.
So the data that is coming in, it's actually promising. If you look at the numbers which have just been released, because even if you look at the epidemiological curve, there has been a decline in the number of new cases, which is good news for Zimbabwe. And I think that also reflects the data elsewhere in Africa, which is really, promising, because it shows that we are heading in the right direction. But however, as you correctly mentioned in your question, that there has been a change in the behavior of people lately. People are no longer adhering so much to the preventative measures of COVID-19. They're no longer using masks. They are no longer sanitizing their hands. So really, the data is promising, but then the response from the public is a bit worrisome.
I've spoken to other medical experts, and some people have touched on the possibilities behind Zimbabwe experiencing a second wave. What are your thoughts on that?
No, there's a real possibility of a second wave, but always when you're dealing with something that is new, that has not been experienced before, it's difficult to predict with confidence that there's going to be a second wave. But if you look at what is happening and what has happened in history, for example, if you look at what was called the Spanish flu, it so happened that at the point when that's when they experienced the second wave, which was more severe and more profound than the first wave. And bringing the perspective closer home, if you look at what's happening in terms of the way they are interacting and the way the way people are going by their daily business nowadays, there really is a worrisome possibility that we might be hit by a second wave.
How prepared do you think Zimbabwe is to manage a second wave?
It's really difficult to measure preparedness, but what we can mention as the progress that has been made so far, because the picture in terms of the resources that we have in dealing with COVID-19, they're now different from what was the case when we first had our first case locally. There has been a number of isolation centers that have been set up, some in the Midlands, some in the Matebeleland, some in Mashonaland, and some actually still being built as we speak. And our capacity to test and diagnose COVID-19 has increased, but not to the level that we would say we are comfortable with. So in terms of how prepared we were, when we had the first wave, I think we've made some progress, but a lot still needs to be done if we were to say we are 100% prepared to deal with the second wave. We still need more equipment in terms of ventilators. We need more PCR machines, which are going to increase our capacity to testing. But some experts have actually been arguing that the numbers which we are reporting are actually lower than Europe. But if you look at our capacity to test is actually lower as well. So we might not be testing enough. So I think wrapping it up, I think we are slightly more prepared than we were on the second wave, but there needs to be more work to be done, so to speak, in terms of us reaching where we want to be.
As a nation right now, we're slowly easing regulations. We see schools are reopening. We see businesses slowly going back to normalcy. We talk about the local travels and so forth. What measures would we need to put in to ensure that COVID-19 doesn't spread beyond what we can manage right now?
I think what we need to be doing right now is using the few resources that we have, and that is the power to educate people on the need to not be complacent and think that COVID-19 is over. We have seen what it can do. The impact on Africa and in Zimbabwe hasn't been that much, but that doesn't mean people should be relaxing. That doesn't mean people should think that this is a thing that is a thing of the past. So I think we really need to be talking to people, educating them, and emphasizing the need for them to adhere to these preventative measures for COVID-19. And in terms of whether schools and general life should be going on, I think it needs to go on, because if you look at data that has been coming in of how there has been increase in other conditions in terms of mortality, morbidity like malaria, diabetes mellitus, you see that a lot of focus has been placed on COVID-19 to an extent that we have forgotten about other conditions which people are also suffering from. So I think we need a comprehensive approach which addresses all those issues in terms of health, in terms of the economy, but still moving forward. But we need to move forward with caution and with wisdom. So I think people generally need to be educated that yes, we're going to move on, but we need to, still maintain those preventative measures.
Now, Doc, when we talk about the impact of COVID-19 on Zimbabwe, if we date back to March once again, a lot of people seem to fear the repercussions. They thought that with the current state of the healthcare sector in Zimbabwe, the impact might be very devastating, but to our surprise, the amount of people that are dying is actually very low in comparison to other countries. Now, through our conversations talking about the effects of COVID-19 worldwide, one thing they've also highlighted is the fact that a lot of people under the age of 35, or a lot of youthful people, seem to be able to beat COVID-19. A lot of the people that actually die are people of age or people with pre-existing conditions. Zimbabwe being a country whereby a majority of the population is under the age of 35, could that be something that's actually helping us in terms of how many people are contracting and beating COVID?
Yes, I agree with you, Mike. The impact of COVID-19 has not been what was feared was going to be the case with this thing, like when we started having cases of COVID-19, because our healthcare, our health sector has suffered a lot in the recent past. So it was in a state where it was in a bad shape to be able to handle such a devastating pandemic such as COVID-19. But for actually, to the puzzlement of many scientists and medical experts, the impact was not that much. And as you correctly said, one of the factors that people are proposing to explain that sort of like anomaly, if you want to call it, is the age, because COVID-19 tends to be more severe clinically in people who have advanced age and also have other comorbid illnesses. So if you look at the age distribution of our population, you see that most of our population are actually, middle age to the young population. We have a few people who are in the elderly, so to speak, age range, and most of them are in the rural areas anyway, where COVID-19 has not really been an issue that much as compared to the urban areas. However, we have had a few deaths, but not as much as people predicted. So yeah, I think it has something to do with the age, but also it could be a reflection of our capacity to be testing for these conditions, because we might be missing a lot of them. I think in Africa, there was actually a study that was done in Kenya where they were looking at, what they call antibody testing, where they will be testing the blood from donors to see how many of the donors have COVID-19, which has not been diagnosed otherwise. So they actually saw that it's more prevalent than what the test was saying. So yeah, I think there could be under testing which is going on as well, and age is definitely contributed to that low impact.
I've spoken to a lot of young people, some who actually have contracted coronavirus, and some of them were saying that the symptoms might be not what we typically expected. One was talking about the fact that they woke up and like they just had a really big headache, and it wouldn't go away, and they went to go get tested, and they said it's coronavirus. These are not the symptoms that we typically are expecting people to be showing. And so what exactly should people be looking out for?
So most of our patients that we have had this side, they're actually asymptomatic. They actually feel nothing. I actually work with some people who have had the virus. They had nothing to show for it. They only got tested simply because they had been a contact to a confirmed case. So most of the people are not going to really to have many symptoms. If they're going to be having symptoms, is maybe the headache that you have said, maybe a runny nose, maybe a dry cough. But by and large, if you look at the data that is coming in, I think one of the most predictive symptom, which most likely means someone is COVID, is the loss of sense of smell and the loss of sense of taste. But by and large, I think to date, we have only had just a few cases of people who present with the severe symptoms, the shortness of breath, the severe fever, and everything. But by and large, I think in Africa, most of the patients have had little to no symptoms. I think again it's because of the age and and maybe other factors, because research has shown that the climate might also contribute, because we are actually in summer for the most part of Southern Africa, which tends to slow down the spread of the virus and its progression in terms of infection. So all those factors have actually worked in favor of Africa and Zimbabwe as well. So yeah, most of our symptoms are mild symptoms.
How are people operating in the rural areas under these COVID regulations? I think of some of the complaints that people have had over the times, talking about the fact that masks are expensive and so forth. If someone in the urban areas is complaining about that, I can only imagine in the rural areas.
There actually has been, what I can call surprising, like reception of information, because I think in terms of attitude, I think these go-go's and grannies in the rural areas, they have a better attitude toward the urban community.
PPE, shortage of PPE. Since March, that was one of the biggest issues to date. Has anything changed with regards to access to PPE?
The protective equipment in Africa in general, and particularly in Zimbabwe, still remains a scarce resource. But I think what has changed so far is the understanding of this protective equipment. I think the lack of protective equipment in the earlier days was sort of like, exaggerated by the fact that people didn't really have enough understanding of where it needs to be put on, how much needs to be put on. Because people were thinking all the time, if you're in a health facility,
right,
you're going to be in the overalls, in the Tyvek suits all the time. So through education, a number of workshops have actually been done. They've been conducted, training workshops, where people have been educated on the appropriate amount of protective equipment for different scenarios. So understanding has increased on what is needed. But in terms of supply, yes, government has put efforts to increase supply, but I think by and large, we will still have quite a gap in terms of the equipment that we need and the one that we are getting. And also, if we are anticipating that we're going to be having a second wave, I think we need to be stocking up and trying to acquire more protective equipment for our health cadres.
Now, Doc, as we reopen the country, which is something we're already in the process of, do you, as medical experts, expect the amount of COVID patients to increase?
Yes, definitely. We think they are going to increase because of the logistics which are going to be in place. There's going to be a lot of movement of people, and where there's movement, it makes it very easy for the virus to spread. So a lot more people are going to be contracting the virus, and the number of cases they are likely to increase. In terms of the patients, so to speak, in quotes, the ones that are going to be needing medical services, they might not increase that much because, like I said, most of our cases are asymptomatic, and quite a number have mild symptoms. So by and large, I think the number that is actually going to be, needing medical medical attention, yes, it's going to increase, but I think and I hope that it's going to remain in a state where the health sector can manage.
Now, what words would you give to the ordinary person, considering the fact that they also need to have their life continue? And they, like you just mentioned, there's a possibility that the COVID cases will still increase. What advice would you give the regular Zimbabweans, regular citizens, based on that information there?
I think COVID-19 is here, and it's here to stay. It's not likely to go anywhere anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in terms of what we have learned so far about the condition is that it's something that we can control, but that requires unity of purpose as a nation, as the whole world in fighting this pandemic. So I think to the individual, I would like just to emphasize the need of practicing the measures that have been proven to work, and also to encourage them to go about their normal business, but still find a way of factoring in all those measures that we have been taught about. And for those who are able, they need to be supporting each other. Even for the patients themselves, they need support, because there has been a lot of mental health issues associated with COVID-19, people getting depression, some people getting all sorts of mental health issues. So I think we need to continue to support each other. If you have a friend who's in isolation, give them a call, talk to them, and encourage them. And I think by and large, if we continue working together and practicing all these measures that have been shown to work, I think there is an end to COVID-19. There is a victory for us as the human race, so to speak, at the end of the tunnel.
What about to the youth themselves? They're the least susceptible to dying to COVID-19. And so what role do you think the youth of the nation need to play in terms of helping people beat COVID-19?
Tomorrow, we are the ones who are going to be shaping the world. And for us to have, a situation where we have lost a lot of our elderly due to COVID-19, it's not really a favorable situation. And the fact that we're not as susceptible to the virus as our elderly counterparts shouldn't make us by any means reckless. We should be the guardians, so to speak, of this whole situation. So I think by that, I just want to urge all the youth out there to continue adhering to the preventive measures, practicing social distancing, and all those other measures.
Sithanda ukubonga uDr. Arnold Teremuka ubechasisa ngempela umbono wakhe mayelana ngokumemetheka komkhuhlane we-COVID-19 elizweni. So that was our Dr. Arnold Teremuka muri eZimbabwe. Vangachinyatsozeya maondro avo sachiremba senyanzvi munyaya dzeutano vachinyatsozeya vachitsanangura kuti chii chiri kuita kuti chirwere ichi chiendere mberi chichitekeshera. Uhlelo The Connection elami uMike Hove mthwakazo muhle. Earlier on we were touching about ukumemetheka komkhuhlane we-COVID-19. Just another update, just ukuthi silikhumbuze phela ukuthi kahle kahle kuyini okwenzakalayo elizweni. Sikhuluma nje elizweni mthwakazo muhle, there's 8,300 COVID cases. The death toll currently stands at 242, and approximately 7,800 people elizweni have recovered from umkhuhlane we-COVID-19. Chirongwa The Connection mwineni Mike Hove muri eZimbabwe. If you're looking to give your input, you can text us on WhatsApp on +1 202 465 0318.
In Lupane and Cholocho, a lot of households have been facing food insecurities due to human and wildlife conflicts and also climate change. In order to find out how these communities have been surviving, do check out the 2 documentaries by Community Podium. My name is Mzo7 aka Mr. Gagagogo.
Tandubonga Mr. Gaga Gugu. So that's some of the work that Community Podium TV is doing. Earlier last week, we had the founder of Community Podium TV, Onkosikona Dibiti, on this program, and he was basically breaking down everything that they're doing at Community Podium TV. Some of the stuff that they're doing is COVID-19 related. So please check out their Facebook page, check out their Instagram page, check out their Twitter page to find out more about these documentaries and programs that they're doing, whereby bayafundisa uZulu ikakhulukazi kobulawayo lapho kukhanya ngani kulabantu abaningi ababhubhayo. Just in the past 2 weeks or so kulabantu abedlula ichumi, 10 people kobulawayo that have passed away. So these are Community Podium TV's some of the platforms that are there to educate abantu about what's going on when it comes to umkhuhlane lo COVID-19. Now, earlier on, I touched on the fact that we're also going to be focusing on Sarudzo Zegorerino Zurwitka Nomu America. We're going to be focusing on the presidential elections that are going to be held here in the United States of America next week on the 3rd of November. Now, these presidential elections are going to see President Donald Trump go up against the former Vice President Joe Biden. There's also other people who are running for the presidential ticket, but those are the main two. So Takabata Vechidiki Vakasiana, we got a hold of several different Zimbabwean Americans who are going to be breaking down what their thoughts are on the upcoming presidential election. But we also got a hold of a young political analysts that are based here in Washington, D.C., who are going to be breaking down their thoughts on the upcoming elections. But before we go further, a lot of people have been wondering recently how America plans on holding their presidential elections during this time whereby there's COVID-19. Now, for those that seem to slip up and forget, COVID-19 is, there's a lot of things that are being encouraged when it comes to COVID-19, amongst them being social distancing and so forth. So people have been wondering, how is America going to be holding their presidential elections, and whilst at the same time ensuring that these rules and regulations that have been encouraged by the World Health Organization and, of course, the U.S. government and governments across the whole world that target towards preventing coronavirus are respected. So let's head over to one of the reports that we have that were done by Veronica Velaglacias, VOA correspondent, and she basically breaks down how America is going to be doing this. She speaks to several different people who are going to be partaking in this whole process behind it. Let's head over to our correspondent.
In this pandemic, plexiglass barriers, masks, and hand sanitizers are essential tools, not just for safety, but for U.S. democracy.
We've added social distancing markers to ensure that everyone's respecting that 6-foot requirement. We do ask that all voters wear masks when they enter the polling place. We're using one-time use only pens, disposable privacy folders.
Angie Maniglia Turner is a top elections official in the city of Alexandria, Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. The November 3rd presidential vote is a national election, but it is local officials supervised by her who do the critical work of counting votes and mailing ballots. By mid-October, almost 17,000 people had voted in person at this Office of Elections.
I didn't want to risk it getting lost in the mail or that I filled out the wrong form or anything like that.
It's part of an unprecedented torrent of early voting nationwide. Record numbers will be casting ballots in person or by mail. Here, the votes won't be counted until 7 p.m. on Election Day, but early ballots can be pre-processed to get results faster.
Checking that the voter has done everything properly, that the ballot was returned marked, that it has all the signatures that are needed.
How this works varies from state to state, though. Important swing states like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania can't even open ballots until Election Day, and that could mean delays in calling the winner. Across the country, elections offices are in high gear. The city of Alexandria is training 600 election officials who will serve at 30 polling stations.
You have the poll books. Those are electronic poll books that are used to check in voters, machines that are scanning the ballots on Election Day and counting those. And then there are also the accessible machines.
The officers, who are paid an average of $150, are also trained to watch for polling place emergencies or disruptions.
Not here to represent any one party. We're doing this on behalf of our state and our fellow citizens, and we don't care who you vote for. We just want to make sure that you are able to vote safely and securely.
In 2018, the Election Administration and Voting Survey found that half of U.S. poll workers were aged 61 or older, a group at higher risk from COVID-19. Here, in the city of Alexandria, they say taking that risk is worth it.
The fact that we are here indicates our commitment, and I think gives a good example to the citizens that also come out. But it's also important to make sure that this election, particularly this year, is a fair and honest one.
Veronica Valeras Iglesias for VOA News, Alexandria, Virginia.
Shout out to VOA correspondent Veronica Velas Iglesias. She was basically breaking down as she spoke to several different volunteers who are going to be helping to facilitate the upcoming presidential elections. Now, let's head over to a Zimbabwean American who's going to be voting. Her name is Tapazo Matinenga. We speak about the upcoming presidential elections, the importance of having young people come out in their numbers and voting, what she is looking to get out of the next president, whoever it is, be it President Donald Trump, be it former Vice President Joe Biden, be it any other candidate that is running under the third-party candidates. What exactly is she looking for in the next president as an immigrant who has become a naturalized American? So let's head over to my interview that I had with Tafato to hear more.
This election is an urgent election. You know, it's a do or die. Mm-hmm. You have to participate. And I think it's critical that everybody gets involved. Mm-hmm. Whether you're able to vote or you're not able to vote, this election matters to the very core, especially when it comes to us Africans, us immigrants. Mm-hmm. I feel like we have, you have to stay informed. You have to be participating and know exactly what the implications are in the next president who will be our next president for the next 4 years.
Speaking of implications, policies, and so forth, as a young African, I guess, African-based in America or Zimbabwean American, what policies are you hoping for, are you expecting out of the next president of the United States, be it the same or different?
So the issues that affect me, Mike, as an immigrant, obviously, are immigration, those national emergency laws that he enacted to ban certain nationalities from coming into the country. Mm-hmm. And that not only impacted certain people from certain countries, as he had said. I remember Zimbabweans having difficulty into entering the country, and these people actually had valid immigration papers. Mm-hmm. So, so having done things like that, that you're not even protected, even though you know that you have worked hard to get to this stage, you have all the right documentation, you still don't have the right protections. Mm-hmm. So we don't want a president who thinks that they can just change policies and laws that pertain to immigration. And I'm also worried about the minimum wage, $7, which we know you can't do anything. And it's the Republican Party is not interested in raising that.
They did say they're looking to raise it to 15.
Well, that's under the Democratic Party and not Republicans. Republicans are actually concerned that any increase will mean we'll get businesses out of business. But if the people cannot afford to pay their rent, I'm looking at you and I, the things that affect you and I on a daily basis. So we need a minimum wage. I live in Virginia. Virginia is one of the highest one of the highest cost of living rates. So with $7, even if you was to say to raise it to $10, it's not enough.
Let's talk a little more about representation, because that seems to be a big deal with a lot of people when it comes to voting. We see this year is very monumental in terms that we actually see the first female of color, who is also of an immigrant background, Senator Kamala Harris, running on the Democratic ticket as a vice presidential candidate. As a young person who has an immigrant background, who is of color, do you find yourself gravitating towards her? What's your thoughts when they talk about Senator Kamala Harris?
Definitely. That I definitely gravitate, and I'm proud that Biden was able to select Kamala Harris as his running mate. Especially for me, as being a woman and being an immigrant and being an African American, Black person, actually, I wear so many hats, and those hats right now I see them in Kamala Harris. The fact that I know that being, having these obstacles of being a Black person and being an immigrant person, you still know that you can still achieve the highest level of office, and which is, the biggest discussions that we have in our workplaces, whereby we talk about representation, who is sitting at the boards, who is making those decisions.
Okay. Now, I also want to touch on another thing. In this election, a lot of people have the impression that there's only President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden who are running for president, but there's actually a lot more people. We've got the likes of the Green Party and the likes of someone who seems to be very impressionable amongst the youth, the president of the birthday party, Kanye West.
Really?
As someone who's actually partaking in these elections, who's actually putting something on the ballot, do you think that these other people are people to be looking to be considered? Are they something that are going to disrupt the election?
Like I said, we are living in serious times, and this is a serious election. Mm-hmm. I don't have time to be looking at what Kanye West is doing and what these others are doing, because at the end of the day, I know that they're the ones, they're not going to bring, when we look at who's going to take America for the next 4 years, it's not going to be Kanye West, and neither is it going to be the other party. So to be honest, I have no idea what they're doing, who they are, what they stand for, because politics is a game of numbers, and they just don't have the numbers. And I'm not sure what their end game is. So for me to tell you and actually respond to you, say that I know anything about them, I really don't, because I think I'm mostly interested in actual change in the direction where it's going.
Right. Saka chandoda kunyatsonzwisisa hangu sechizvarwa cheZimbabwe chinogara muno muAmerica, tikuona mapolicies angabatwa naPresident Trump uyezve navaimbove mutevedzeri wemutungamiriri wenyika vaJoe Biden, navo vachinyatsotsvanangurwa zvava kuda kuimplementa vakawanawo vakabudirira musarudzo dzegore rino. Immigrant inogara muno muAmerica, ndeapi mapolicies amuroda kuonawo mutungamiriri achabudirira hake achiimplementa?
Inini sechizvarwa chekuZimbabwe chakauya kunoku kuti ndiwane rubatsiro rwokuti ndiwane ruraramo. Chinhu chinonyanyondibata-bata inyaya yeimmigration, magariro edu sevanhu nekuwana kumapepa, kuti tive vanhu vanopuwa wandutso muzvakanaka. And process iyoyo yokuti tiwane mapepa under President Trump ine zvinhu zvakawanda zvekuti steps akawanda inotitadzisa kuti tete get to that level yekuti munhu unonzi wane mapepa yekuti uende kubasa. Kuti isusu toziva kuti tinoshanda kuzvenichi uwane pekugara pakanaka, ukwanise kuchengeta vabereki vako. Zvino kana usina mapepa muno muAmerica kwasiyana nekuSouth Africa kuti unokwanisa kutombodzokera, hapana kwaunokwanisa kudzokera. Saka zvinhu izvozvo pavakaita mapolicies avo yekuti zvenichi certain people are not allowed to even come into the country based on their nationality or on their religious backgrounds. It did not just affect them. Zvakaafecta isusu, even vanhu vanobva kuZimbabwe. Zvichiri kuyeuka nguva iyoyo, yanga iri nguva yamuna December, paakaita ipolicy iyoyo. Pane vanhu vanga vakabatwa kumabhodha, vane mapepa chaiwo. Vachitomiswa, totanga kutovhunzurunzwa, ezvo uri kutanga futi immigration process yavo. Saka inini ndichiona zvinhu zvakadaro zvakuti unoshungurudzwa after even working hard to get those papers, yokuti ukwanise kusenza, and then wasenza, we're looking at minimum wage, uri kutadza kushanda basa unokwanisa kuti ukwanise kubhadhara mabhiri ako paunogara, chikafu, healthcare yako, even but apa futi uri kufanira kuburitsa mari yekuti uchengete vana vako, ukwanise kubatsira hama dzako dzese dziri kumamisha. Kuti ubatsira hama dzako dziri kumamisha, iwe unofanira kukwanisa kuzvichengeta. Saka mari yatinopiwa kuno $7 an hour haikwane kuti munhu ukwanise kubhadhara rent yako uchizvipa chikafu. Ndosaka uchizoona munhu pane vanhu vakawanda vari kupota vachifa madzimba uko nenyaya yekungotenderedzana mumabasa. Because unotoziva kuti mari iyoyoka kuti itobatanaka kubva kushift from shift, which is not the way to live. You're supposed to have a balanced life.
Tochibata kanyaya yerepresentation, tinonzwa nyanzvi munyaya dzematongero enyika vachiti sarudzo idzi dzinenge dzakatikoshei nekuti gore rino tiri kuona mutevedzeri wemutungamiriri wenyika kana kuti munhu wekadzi wechitema nayewo ari immigrant ari kukwikwidza kuda kuwana chigaro chekuva mutevedzeri wemutungamiriri wenyika. Munozvionawo seizvi nyaya yaSenator Kamala Harris?
Aiwa, ndinofarwa chaizvo nokuti ndichiona Senator Kamala Harris vanondifungisa inini. Vanondifungisa the reason why ndakauya kuno kuAmerica. Kuti ndizive kuti zvenichi ininiwo ndokwanisa kusenza ndichiita zvinhu zvakanaka uye ndichikwanisa kuenda kune zvinzvimbo zvakadai.
Ngatitarisei mabatiro atinoita sarudzo kuZimbabwe uye zvenyaya dzezvematongero enyika. Tichitarisa zvekare mabatirwo anoita sarudzo kuno kuAmerica nenyaya dzezvematongero enyika. Mungati pane zviripo here zvatingadzidza senyika yeZimbabwe?
I think pane zvakawanda zvatingadzidze senyika yeZimbabwe. And I understand kuti right now kuZimbabwe mutungamiriri wenyika vachiwengwa vanenge vakataura kuti by-elections here asaitwe because tiri munguva yeCovid. And semafungiro angu ndichingoteerera izvozvo ndichiona kuti fine nyika pasi rese tine COVID, but COVID haisi kureva kuti fundamental rights and constitutional rights like the right to vote has to be undermined. And that is why ndichiona nyika yedu yeZimbabwe, it's important kuti protect my rights iwayo, and there is no reason why we have to not protect our constitution. If it's a matter of kuti ZEC it can learn other countries are having elections in the midst of the pandemic. Kuno kuAmerica tataura kuti next week teta kuvota. Pane other countries vakavota, kuMalawi vakavota, nemamwe other African countries vese vakavota. We can learn and see what have they gotten right and what have they gotten wrong during this pandemic as vachivota, but not at one time did they have to take away that right to the people. So I think it's a matter of balancing muchita ma policies. Kuno we have early voting yakaitwa. We still have the mandatory requirements that you can vote. Unoenda wakapfeka mask yako, muri 6 meters apart, just kuungana. The same way it can be taken, but doesn't mean kuti right yangu yokunzi ndivote kana kuti even kusangana ndichitaura kuti I'm unhappy with the way the mapurisa kwavari kuita kuuraya vanhu mabhoyi ndotadza kuita voice rangu rinzwike. Constitution munoprotecta those rights and munoprotecta those rights in the midst of a pandemic.
There's a lot of Zimbabweans, a lot of Zimbabwean Americans that are going to be voting in these elections. Zimbabwean Americans aside, there's a lot of African people of African descent that are now American citizens that are also going to be voting, and other immigrants that are going to be voting. What words would you have for people that are in the same position as you?
This is a privilege. Voting is a privilege, and we need to exercise this whenever you have that right. And that right emanates at different stages. Like I said, you still have the right to exercise. You have the right to exercise that right, even if you can't go to the vote, to actually place your vote on the ballot. And what I mean by that is go and talk to the people who are able to vote. Because pamwe can't even drive. If you're able to drive someone, drive them to make sure that they exercise that right. Go to know the issues that affect you, because your attitude on elections and voting will not change the day that you are given that right to vote. When you get those papers, it will remain the same. Teach your children the importance of voting.
All right, sithanda ukubonga uThafazwa Matinenga ngokungena kuhlelo. Uyasho ngempela, uyakhuthaza intsha sebenzisani ithuba leli ukuyovota. If you are a Zimbabwean American, uyasho ngempela ukuthi hayi Zulukandaba, this is not the time ukudlalisa ivote. Kuthiwa phumani ngobuningi benu uyovota. It doesn't matter who you're voting for. Uyakhuthaza abantu ukuthi for you to get your voice heard, hayi uthi phumani ngobuningi benu liyovota mhlaka 3 November. So yikho lokho okwenzakalayo lapha kweleMelika. But siqhume njalo ingcwethi kwezombusazwe. We also got a hold of a young political analyst based here in Washington, D.C., Kelvin Manduna. We've had him on different programs. I reached out to Kelvin to hear his thoughts as a political analyst on the upcoming elections. And Kelvin also delves into the fact as to he focuses on what youth have to gain from the upcoming elections. He touches on some of the policies that have been proposed by both the Democratic nominee, former Vice President Joe Biden, and the current president and also Republican nominee, President Donald Trump. Let's head over to my interview with Manduna.
Election iqakathekile in the history of eMelika for a long time. Abantu bayakhala ukuthi ilizwe selithathwe ngedirection abangajabuli ngayo, babona ngani isikhathi sokuthi bazame ukutshintsha idirection yelizwe.
Manduna, kuma debates phakathi kukamongameli Donald Trump owebandla lama Republicans kanye lo wayengumsekeli kamongameli umnumzana Joe Biden owebandla lama Democrats, bonke bobabili bathinte indaba ezimayelana ngokuthuthukiswa kwabatsha kanye ngendaba ezimayelana ngokuthi abantu bokuza ama-immigrants kumele baphathwe njani kweleMelika. Awusitshela umbono wakho ngama policies abo.
Masikhangele ama-youth wonke amaphathi angu-2 angizwi kahle ama-policy akhangelela ama-youth. Into ekhangela ama-youth ngathi number 1 i-student debt, izikweleti, sebenzi, especially ngesikhathi lesi se-COVID. Number 3, affordable housing, and also indaba ye-healthcare. Ama-candidate angu-2 abakhulumi specifically targeting ama-concerns of youth within ama-party abo, especially kuma-Democrats bale left wing yabo led by abantu abanjengo AOC, labo Bernie Sanders. That wing within e-party is more progressive on indaba zama-youth and ama-policies which would change impilo yama-youth. Kodwa ama-candidate lawa angu-2 ngathi aba-advance ama-policies which would really have deep impact on inkangelelo yama-youth.
Sikhangele isimo somnotho, indaba ezimayelana ngokuthuthukiswa kwabensundu esingathi ngesingisi ama-minorities, njalo indaba zokutholakala kwemisebenzi. Sizwe umongameli Donald Trump eziqhenya ngempela esithi phansi kombuso wakhe konke lokhu kwayenzakala. Ubona ngani lokhu kulakho ukumtholela usekelo oluvela kwabatsha na ama-minorities kanye labantu bokuza?
Umongameli Trump siyamuzwe sithi wasebenza kakhulu ukuncedisa abantu abamnyama. Economy before i-COVID was not doing so badly. Kodwa ama-Democrats rightly so bayathi bona u-Obama nguye waqalisa umsebenzi. So uTrump ngumuntu wabuya to harvest ama-benefits of umsebenzi ka-Obama. It is true to some extent it was good for abantu abamnyama, but not abantu abamnyama kuphela. It's not as if bebesenza ama-policy specifically for abantu abamnyama. It was to benefit umuntu wonke. Angibonanga mina ngesikhathi sami ngikhangela uTrump senza anything deliberate ukunceda abantu abamnyama, ngoba abantu abamnyama kimi nxa usithi uzabancedisa you have to look ukhangela ukuthi bahlala ngaphi, abantu ababo bafunda ngaphi, and address ama-problems abo kundawo abahlala khona njengama-cities anjengo-Baltimore, Chicago, which are majority black, and indawo lezi zilama-problems which are specific to abantu abamnyama, and ngesikhathi ka-Trump angibonanga encedisa ngalezi ndaba.
Sesikhangela ke indlela abaphatha ngayo ukhetho njalo indaba zombusazwe lapha kweleMelika ubona ngani kukhona na esilakho ukufunda njengelizwe njengeZimbabwe?
Angikhona ukuthi kulama lessons amaningi. I-election yeMelika ngokubona kwami is a very peculiar election because of his system yabo, balama mail-in ballot, balandlani, things that are different from izinto esizenza ekhaya. Ilizwe like iZimbabwe ngiyathi should chart its own course when it comes to izinto ze-governance and ama-elections. We create our own version of democracy ehambelana with our own values, with our own systems. Singazama ukukopela abanye nce, we copy even ama-bad habits instead of being creative.
Sithanda ukubonga umnumzana Kelvin Manduna ngokungena kuhlelo lwethu muri eZimbabwe manzwaka ba Kelvin Manduna wangachinyatso zenyai nyanji munyadze ezwe machongero enyika. Now, Kelvin Manduna was highlighting on several different issues here. He touched on youth, he touched on people of color, and he also touched on what Zimbabwe can learn from this presidential election. Now, one thing Kelvin highlights is whoever becomes the next president needs to make sure that they address issues in relation to youth. He talks about health, he talks about debt, he talks about job creation. And when it comes to people of color, Kelvin touches on one thing. I asked him in terms of saying, in the last presidential debate, we heard President Donald Trump celebrating what he was able to achieve throughout his term by saying that he, as a president, has done arguably the best or the most to promote and enhance people of color in the world, in America. Now, Kelvin Manduna says, as much as it's true that President Trump was able to fix the economy or was able to ensure that the economy is floating, this, of course, is before coronavirus. He says that, as argued by the Democrats, President Trump was able to inherit the fruits of the hard labor of former President Barack Obama. So yilolu daba esilalo namhla kuhlelo lwethu lwabasakhulayo umthwakazo omuhle lithini ngalokhu balani imilayezelo yenu ku WhatsApp kunombolo ethi +1 202 465 0318. This broadcast once again is still going to be available on our 3 Facebook pages soon after our radio broadcast on our 3 Facebook pages: VOA Shona, VOA Independent, Nepa, VOA Studio 7. Muri Zimbabwe makatera chirongwa chedu chevechidiki uhlelo The Connection.
Zikhipha lapho egama ngumawiza, I'm a kwaito artist aka Mr. Ngikhuluma isikhiwa ngeveneki. Guys, COVID-19 abayibiza ngecorona into ekhona. Phambili nge-social distancing, asigezeni izandla always, stay safe, stay home. Last number.
Easy machita, easy.
Zikhipha lapho
Wiza on the beat uthi easy machita easy. Aiwa muri eZimbabwe muri kunzwa Wiza ari kukurudzirai uyasho ngempela uthi hayi gezani izandla sulukandaba. Make sure ukuthi you abide by the rules set by the World Health Organization and of course the Zimbabwean government. Now, early on in the program, Muri Zimbabwe, as we kick-started, I told you, I said, Nasim Chirongwa Chubata Nyaye COVID-19, Tichazea Jekari Nyaye, Sarudzo Zirupit Kamino America. And as we wrap up our program, we're going to take some time to commemorate some of our fallen heroes, our young Zimbabwean fallen heroes. Throughout this whole year, we've seen a lot of 2020 take a lot of young people from Zimbabwe, amongst them being Zororo Makamba, who died due to COVID-19, Patson Zamara, who died due to cancer, and now going to Zetunga, the city of Bulawayo. In actual fact, the whole nation and the continent at large over the weekend lost another young hero, and the whole continent, especially all creators, people in the arts sector, are mourning. Over the weekend, Zimbabwe lost the 35-year-old Bulawayo born and bred Luveve boy in Ntwanagama Kelvin Mclinin Shizio passed away. He unfortunately was part of a hit-and-run incident. He was run over. The police are still investigating it, but that was what happened over the weekend. Someone who's been described by several different people as a torchbearer. Now, Calvin is known well for his music, and some of his hit singles such as Kupani, which featured South African international rapper, superstar Casper Nyovest. He's also had music featuring the likes of Gigi Lamaine, and of course our recent Zimbabwean who won the first BET award, Shasha. So Calvin has touched so many different lives, so I found it very important and commemorate the life of this young hero. Let's head over to a little clip that I prepared as a memorial. I spoke to different people who are part of the creative sector, people that are all well known in Zimbabwe, about the impact that Calvin has had on the sector. Let's head over to that clip.
I don't know, but I think it's Calvin on the beat.
On Saturday, 24 October 2020, 35-year-old multi-award winning rapper Calvin passed away. An event that left a lot of Zimbabwean creatives mourning the loss of a legend, Intwana Eluveve, Intwana Kamanax, names he was affectionately known by. The 35-year-old, who has been described by some musicians as a torchbearer, passed away with over 10 official albums and 20 underground projects to his name, which featured hit singles such as Ubulawayo, Skipani, which featured multi-award winning artist Casper Nyovest, King Kong, and more.
One, two, three, go! When they see me, they're like King Kong. Beating on my chest, I'm like King Kong.
To hear more about the legacy Calvin left behind, I reached out to some creatives who have either crossed paths with Calvin, had a chance to work with him, or knew him very well. Afro jazz musician MJ Sings says Calvin helped him break into the industry.
So it's early 2014 and I'm performing my first ever gig and I'm doing a cover song. And here comes this guy. He's got merchandise, he's got caps, backpacks, everything that you can imagine. I'm like, who is this guy? And he steps on stage and he just blows the crowd. So when he steps out of the stage, he comes to me and he says, "Kid, you are a star. Please come to my studio next week." And that's how it started, man. We recorded my first single. We did everything from artwork, promo work. That's how it all started, man. And we just started creating music.
Calvin touched the hearts of many. Amongst them is Begezela, a well-known Afro-jazz musician who produced the hit single Begezela, which has over 2 million views on YouTube.
I'm seated here in my office at a loss for words. I woke up in the morning to the sad news of the untimely departure of a hero, a superstar with a very great future. I know umuntu phambili, we always say the nicest things, but this one is actually true. This guy was a hero.
I'm making so much noise. I'm on radio, everywhere, social media, very.
Intwana Kamanax, that Luveve boy, Intwana Eluveve, Lokshin Obama, ulale ngokuthula bafo. Zulukandaba, silahlekelwe liqhawe ngempela. We lost a young legend, young hero. We saw the likes of Casper Nyovest, all of them highlighting how Zimbabwe's lost a young superstar, someone who was bound for greatness. So for those that are looking for more details as to what's going to happen in terms of Kelvin, in terms of the funeral details and so forth, check out his page. They have been updating on as to what's happening on his page, but you can also follow me on Twitter at BigMike3, and I'm also going to be updating Abantu what exactly is happening. Sakatashka kumagumo echirongwa chedu chanhasi muri yeZimbabwe sesifikile emaphethelweni wohlelo lwethu labasakhulayo. Just an update one more time muri yeZimbabwe nasi muchirongwa changa tichizeya nyaya yezvechirwere checoronavirus enyaya yeCovid-19 chirwere cheCovid-19 chiroendera mberi chichitekeshera muZimbabwe. As we speak, just yesterday alone muri yeZimbabwe 698 PCR tests were conducted. 27 of those cases are reported are back positive. There were no recoveries, and as we speak in the country, there are 264 active cases. The amount of deaths that died just yesterday alone are 5 people. So that is the total. And as we speak in the country, in total, we currently have over 8,300 COVID cases. Once again, the death toll is currently at 242, and approximately 7,800 people have recovered. We have come to an end of our program. If you're looking to chat with me, you can catch me on social media, on Twitter and Instagram at BigMike3, BigMyke3. That's the username. Gatsangane, same time, same place. Let's meet here on The Connection, same time, same place. Next week on The Connection with your boy Mike Hove, Pano, Studio 7. Bye-bye.